All right, so we are continuing factoring trinomials from 6.3 and 6.4. So we have this first example here, and I'm just going to go through the list. So 2t to the fifth minus 2t to the fourth minus 12t to the third power. So this is what we want to do. It's already in descending order because my exponents go from 5, 4 to 3, right? Descending order meaning the exponent should count down in order. The second step of factoring trinomials is to always see if you can identify greatest common factor. That's really the second process after descending order, is always look for greatest common factor. No matter factoring by grouping, trinomials, binomials, always look for greatest common factor. So when I look at this problem, everybody shares a factor of 2 and everybody shares a factor of t. Now, t is not the greatest common factor. The most they actually all have is t to the what? To the third power. So our GCF here is 2t to the third power. So when we factor that out of everything, it'll leave us with t squared minus t minus 6. All right. So once you factor out the greatest common factor, then you have to look at what is remaining and factor that, or see if it can be factored. So I'm looking at t squared minus t minus 6. We're going to let this GCF just sit there till we finish this problem. So we're looking at this trinomial. My a is 1. So you can do a times c, or you can just use your method from 6.2, meaning you can go straight into your 2 sets of parentheses. So I'm going to do this example both ways for you just to show you that it wouldn't matter. So if we do a times c, I don't see an a, which means the a is understood to be a 1. So in this case, my a times c would be a negative 6. So I'm looking for factors of negative 6. That'll give me a 1. So 2 and 3 can give 1. Now, again, because I know my timetables and I understand how multiplication works, because my product is a negative, that means whatever my factors are that multiply to create that, their signs have to be different from each other. So when I'm looking at my 2 and my 3 and I'm trying to figure out how to get the negative 1, I know that 2 and 3 are going to have different signs, just because that's the only way they can make the negative 6. So let's think about who's who. So if I do negative 2 plus 3, that would give me a positive 1. That's not what I want. So I got the number I need, but not the sign. What do? Just switch the signs and see if it works. So positive 2 minus 3, negative 1. Check. And then if I was to multiply those together, it would be negative 6. Check. All right. So those are my numbers. So t squared minus 3t plus 2t minus 6. Remember, we're factoring by group and we're using the AC method here, right? So once we create the 4 terms, we factor it by grouping. T minus 3. In my second group, I will factor out a positive 2, t minus 3. So they are the same, so I know I did it correct. So t minus 3 times t plus 2. And we're finished the problem. All right, now, if I understand my rules, and I know that because my a here is 1 in the original, once I factored out that GCF, because I know my a is 1, I can just use my method from my 6.2 section, which just says do factors of a c. So my c is negative 6. And look for my numbers that can create the negative 1, which I already know is not a negative 2. That's a 1. So it's a positive 2 and a negative 3. And then if I multiply them, they create the negative 6. So double check still, right? But in 6.2, we learned, hey, if your a is 1, you can just go straight to your 2 sets of parentheses. My t squared is t and t. And then my numbers are a plus 2 and a minus 3. Oh, what? So I have the same answer, right? But a different method. So you have to choose what you're comfortable with. Now, this is not the final answer, and it's always very easy to forget your original greatest common factor. So that GCF needs to come down and be written as the GCF for the final answer. So the correct final answer here would be, and that would be it. All right. Now, if you have t minus 3 times t plus 2, like written in the order like this one, that's still correct. okay? Because multiplication is commutative. So as long as the actual factors are correct inside the parentheses, the order is fine. All right, let's do another one. All right, so this problem is not in descending order. So you have to learn the steps in the process because your mind has to check off the boxes basically. Oh, is it in descending order? Nope, so let's fix that. So 2x cubed plus 4x squared minus 16x. All right, got descending order. Check. Next step says factor out a greatest common factor if it exists. So when I look at this problem, there is a greatest common factor. So 2, 4, and 16 all share a 2, and everybody has an x. So when I factor that out, I'm left with x squared plus 2x minus 8. All right? Next thing is we take this trinomial, x squared plus 2x minus 8, and we see if we can factor it further. So factors of 8, negative 8, that can give us a 2. So 2 and 4. So let's see if I do plus 2 minus 4, that's negative 2. I do negative 2 plus 4, that's positive 2. That's what I need. If I multiplied, I would get negative 8. Check. So double check. All right. So I'm not going to do AC method here because I understand how to do it when my A is equal to 1 and just go straight to my 2 sets of parentheses. But if you need to do A times C and just stick with one process, then that's what you should do for yourself. So I would just do x minus 2 plus 4, and I would bring down my GCF. Final answer. All right. So I am going to do it the AC method on this one only, and then after that, I'm just going to use this method when the A is 1. So I already know my numbers because A times C is still negative 8. So it would be x squared minus 2x plus 4x minus 8. X minus 2, x minus 2, x minus 2, x plus 4. Oh my gosh, it's the same answer. Of course it is, because that's how math works, right? All right, so you choose what works best for you. Learn one method and stick with it no matter what, and you'll be fine. But the more you work it, the more comfortable you will get. All right, let's do another one. All right, so this next one, 6y to the 4th plus 30y cubed plus 36y squared. I think you should pause it and work through it yourself, and then let's see what happens. Okay, so you should have saw that there was a greatest common factor present in that problem. It should have been 6y squared that you factored out. When you factor out 6y squared from everything, you get y squared plus 5y plus 6 left. So then I took that trinomial and I looked to see if I could factor it. So I did factors of 6. That can give me a 5 is what I'm looking for. So I saw 3 and 2. So because I know A is 1, I'm just factoring it straight into my 2 parentheses. I'm not doing the AC method here. But if you did do the AC method, it doesn't change anything. You should still end up with the same answer. Y plus 3 times y plus 2, and 6y squared is your GCF, which should be on the outside. Now, when I went through this and I was writing it, at one point I wrote an X instead of a Y. It's very important that you keep the variable that is present in the original problem. Now, clearly, if you're in class and the instructor can see that you know what you're doing, fine. But my math lab will not give you credit if you switch out the variable. So if they're using an X in the problem and you put a Y, they're going to mark it wrong. So just look for small things like that on my math lab. All right, another one. Actually, I'm not going to do any more in this one. I'm going to end this video and label it GCF, factoring trinomials, and then I'm going to do another video with more examples.